Hello?
Just switch it on.
It's working?
Yeah.
Is it working? Good morning. Patience, because the presidents will be coming in very soon. So please do not sit on a seat where you're not supposed to be. People at the back, if we can start moving over to our seats, please. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies at the back, if we can start getting ready to sit down. The technical people, can we have the lights on, please? Ladies and gentlemen, people at the back, if you can be seated, please, and sit in your designated spaces. I wonder if they're going to put the lights on. Oh, brilliant, brilliant. The lights are coming on. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen at the back, if we can get seated, we need to be seated pretty soon. Brilliant. I'm going to do a very quick summary of some of the conversations that you've heard in the One Planet Summit that was just taking place. We are aware that obviously they're discussing the Africa Pledge, whose focus is around renewable energy, biodiversity, ecosystem conservation, and climate change adaptation in particular. We heard in the last speech that the Deputy Secretary General, Her Excellency Amina J. Mohammed, mentioned the importance and role of youth and also the importance of technology. And also the relevance of finding the investments, these idling funds that need to be released. So it's quite exciting to listen to some of these conversations and get a sense as to what is really happening on the global landscape. Ladies and gentlemen, I can still see some bilaterals happening in the corridors. Can I just request that people begin to get seated? If people can start to get seated, please. We need to clear the corridors for when the presidents come in. Right. I would like to introduce the UN Choir. Can I have a round of applause? Oh, come on. We could do better than that. Thank you. Thank you. The UN Choir is going to start with a song entitled Jambo. Over to you.
Jambo, jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana, wageni wakaribishwa, Kenya yetu hakuna matata. Jambo, jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana, wageni matata. Hakuna matata. Hakuna matata. Jambo, jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni wakaribishwa Kenya yetu, hakuna matata. Jambo, jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni wakaribishwa Kenya yetu, hakuna matata. Hakuna matata. Hakuna matata. Hakuna matata. Jambo, jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni wakaribishwa Kenya yetu, hakuna matata. Jambo, jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni wakaribishwa Kenya yetu, hakuna matata.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I wanted to introduce the next song by the UN choir. Can we have some silence? And can I just request people to begin to be seated, please? We will be having the heads of states. I need this corridor cleared. Corridor and entrance cleared, please.
All the staff members standing at the back needs to go. Leave the entrance clear. Only media.
So people in the corridors, please, can we be seated? We need to be seated. And only media is at the entrance. Anybody else standing by the door, you need to move ASAP. Thank you. We heard a few minutes ago when the Deputy Secretary General said that the train has left the station, 2015. If you're ready to jump on it, 2020. The Sustainable Development Goals and other post-2015 agendas. This next song is a dedication to one of my dear colleague and a colleague of ours from UN Environment, Victor, who was so dedicated to Sustainable Development Goals and died really working on these issues. So they're going to sing a song in Kiswahili for his memory in commemoration of not just Victor, but many other colleagues and many other people who died and were supposed to be at this meeting today.
Tuna
Thank you. I think we need to practice with our round of applause. Can I have another round of applause? Thank you. Thank you so much. Before they go to the next song, I would just like to request everybody at the back standing, if we can start getting seated, please. If we can start getting seated, because the presidents will be coming in anytime soon. And please, ladies and gentlemen, could you kindly sit on your designated space? This next song is entitled Mo Li Hua. I hope I pronounced that properly. And it's a song in Mandarin entitled A White Jasmine Flower. A really good round of applause. Another one. I'm still waiting. Thank you. I would like to request the choir to do Jumbo, again to welcome the new dignitaries who are walking in, if you may. Could I kindly ask, ladies and gentlemen, if you can actually clear this path. We need this section cleared, and I would like to kindly request that you take your seats in your designated locations.
Jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana, wageni wakaribishwa. Kenya yetu hakuna matata. Jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana, wageni wakaribishwa. Kenya yetu hakuna matata. Jambo bwana, habari gani? hakuna matata. Hakuna matata. Hakuna matata. Hakuna matata. Jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni wakaribishwa Kenya yetu, hakuna matata. Jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni wakaribishwa Kenya yetu, hakuna matata. Hakuna matata. Hakuna matata. Hakuna matata. Jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni wakaribishwa Kenya yetu, hakuna matata. Jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni wakaribishwa Kenya yetu, hakuna matata. Hakuna matata.
Okay.
Hakuna
Shall I?
hakuna matata. Jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni wakaribishwa Kenya yetu, hakuna matata. Jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni wakaribishwa Kenya yetu, hakuna matata.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, the heads of states will soon be entering the conference room, so I would kindly request that we get seated. And for those standing close to the exit, we only have the exit for media and for the photographers, please. So please take pictures and tweet on our Twitter handle, which is #SolveDifferent. We're very excited. We've been seeing a lot of tweets from everybody, really talking about personal experiences in terms of how you solve different, how you live your lives, and how you navigate your everyday space on living differently and a sustainable future. Can I kindly request the people at the back that are not seated, please, if you can seat? If we can be seated, please. Thank you very much. For those of you who are just coming in, my name is Musonda Mumba. I'm going to be the MC for this session until I hand over to the President of UNEA. And I am with UN Environment. So ladies and gentlemen, at the back, if you can be seated, please. And we need to make sure that the corridor, my right-hand side corridor, has to be clear. Thank you. Before the choir sings another song, I just want to reiterate the conversation and the discussion that was happening in the One Planet Summit, and the president of the interim president of the World Bank Group, Her Excellency Ms. Kristalina Georgieva, actually did an intervention where she indicated that it's important we have a resilient Africa. And as part of the Africa Pledge, it's important that we make sure, and the commitment that's coming from the bank is that of initiatives such as green bonds and also looking at forest management. But she also iterated and indicated that the role of women, not just in Africa, but globally, is so critical and pivotal in being the change that we need to see in living sustainably. We have a few minutes, maybe less than a minute, before the presidents walk in. Karibuni. Sorry. So in 5 minutes' time, we're going to have the heads of states walking in. So if people can be seated, people at the back, please. The choir is going to give us another song entitled "The Lion Sleeps Tonight." Hey, Peter. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that lovely song. Ladies and gentlemen, the heads of states will be actually entering pretty soon. Shall I move away from there? Can you hear me? The heads of states will be entering pretty soon. So we're going to be ready with the welcome song. Can I kindly request that all the delegates who are standing at the back, if you can kindly seat in your designated spaces? Can I request the choir to start, please? The Karibuni song.
wageni karibuni Kenya, twasema karibuni hapa yu.
Shall I ask everybody to stand?
Kutembea Kenya, twawapokea nyote hapa yu. Wageni wetu twafurahia, baraka tele tunazipata.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we can stand. Can I kindly request you to stand?
Also on the YouTube, you can tell them.
Wageni wetu twafurahia, baraka tele tunazipata. Enyi wageni karibuni Kenya, twasema karibuni hapa yu. Na ni baraka kutembea Kenya, twawapokea nyote hapa yu. Wageni wetu twafurahia, baraka tele tunazipata. Enyi wageni karibuni Kenya, twasema karibuni hapa yu. Na ni baraka kutembea Kenya, twawapokea nyote hapa yu. Usiogope, hakuna matata, twasema karibuni hapa yu. Tunapendana sote hapa Kenya, twasema karibuni hapa yu. Wageni wetu twafurahia, baraka tele tunazipata. Enyi wageni karibuni Kenya, twasema karibuni hapa yu. Na ni baraka kutembea Kenya, twawapokea nyote hapa yu. Wageni wetu twafurahia, baraka tele tunazipata. Enyi wageni karibuni Kenya, twasema karibuni hapa yu. Na ni baraka kutembea Kenya, twawapokea nyote hapa yu. Wageni wetu twafurahia, baraka tele tunazipata. Enyi wageni karibuni Kenya, twasema karibuni hapa yu. Na ni baraka kutembea Kenya, twawapokea nyote hapa yu.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for the choir. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. Excellencies, heads of state, ministers, dignitaries here at UNEA, welcome. My name is Musonda Mumba, and I work for UN Environment, and I'm going to be your MC for this session. I would like to welcome everyone who's arrived and the dignitaries who've just arrived on the podium. And at this juncture, I would like to invite the choir to do a solo song entitled Les oiseaux et l'enfant in French, and to be sung by Irene. Please.
Aux yeux des lumières qui voit passer au loin les oiseaux, comme l'oiseau bleu survolant la terre, voit comme le monde
Merci. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's the UN choir, ladies and gentlemen. At this juncture, I would like to indulge Your Excellencies. I would like to request the Excellencies on the panel to look to your right onto the balcony, because I have photographers over there, if you may. And the delegates seated in the audience to look to your left. I would like you to signal to the world, because there's another million, and if not billion people, who we want to really change the way we live. So if you may, do signal with your hands over that way, because the photographers are looking at you, and they'll give me a hand. Hands up, everybody, hands up. And there's a big sign written, "Solve Different." Are we good? We're looking good? Thank you. Thank you so much. This is our family photo, and I would like to also indulge you a little bit more. If you may actually take your phone or your gadget and do a selfie with the person you're sitting next to and tweet that picture, because we want to go viral. We have to go viral. Please do. 1 minute, very quickly. Let's do. Selfie moment. And remember, the hashtag is Solve Different. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, I would like to introduce the dignitaries seated in front. Your Excellencies, we have the President of the UN Environment Assembly, Mr. Kisler. We have the President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta. We have the President of France, His Excellency Emmanuel Macron. We also have the President of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, His Excellency Sirisena. We also have the President of Madagascar, His Excellency Rajoelina. We also have His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Rwanda, Ngirente. We also have the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Her Excellency Ms. Amina J. Mohammed. We also have the Interim President of the World Bank Group, Her Excellency Ms. Kristalina Georgieva. And we also have the Acting Executive Secretary, the Executive Director of UN Environment, Ms. Joyce Msuya. I would also like to take this opportunity to recognize the Kenyan elders, if you may stand. We have the Kenyan elders, representative of the Kenyan communities. Thank you so much. At this juncture, I would like to hand over to the President of UNEA, Mr. Kisler. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Honorable Ministers, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to declare open the high-level segment of the 4th session of the UN Environment Assembly under the theme Innovative Solutions for Environmental Challenges and Sustainable Consumption and Production. And I will now have the honor to present my address to the Assembly. His Excellency, Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency, Mr. Emmanuel Macron, President of the Republic of France, His Excellency, Mr. Maitripala Sirisena, President of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, His Excellency, Mr. Rajoelina, President of the Republic of Madagascar, His Excellency, the Right Honourable Edouard Ngirente, Prime Minister of the Republic of Rwanda, Her Excellency Amina Mohammed, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, and Ms. Joyce Msuya, Acting Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme. Dignitaries, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, karibuni sana to Kenya. It is a great pleasure to welcome you to the opening of the high-level segment of the 4th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly of the United Nations Environment Programme. The international community has heard the calls for action needed to reorient our planet towards a sustainable path. In order to succeed, a substantial shift in sustainable consumption and production patterns needs to occur in all countries, in line with the ambitions and targets of the 2030 Development Agenda to leave no one behind. Progress is being reported throughout the world as countries build inclusive and resilient economies that brings people out of poverty, ensure food security, education, and provide a healthy environment. However, we must acknowledge that many challenges are threatening to derail our efforts. The last 4 years have been the warmest years on record. We are degrading our lands, polluting our oceans, and extracting resources at rates that are unmanageable and unsustainable. We are entering a reinforcing cycle from which we risk not being able to come back from. Major scientific assessments, such as the 6th Global Environment Outlook, are calling that we, as humanity, have reached a crossroad. A major species extinction event is underway, compromising planetary integrity and Earth's capacity to meet human needs. Action must be taken now to reverse these megatrends, thereby protecting human and environmental health and maintaining current and future integrity of global ecosystems. The 4th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly has taken action on many topics related to the theme of the Assembly. In this sense, we have seen the political will to seek innovation in the development of sustainable consumption and production policies, to improve resource efficiency, and to decouple economic growth from environmental degradation. Throughout the week, we have seen important events where major groups and stakeholders are leading the way to find innovative solutions to environmental challenges. Important dialogues on life cycle approaches, value change, and how a globalized world must decide on new rules of the game that are compatible with a sustainable and healthy planet. This UN Environment Assembly has decided to take on the most pressing environmental challenges in generations, steadily, committed, united, and determined to seek a sustainable path for future generations. This is the moment in time that will define us. We have the scientific evidence, we have the policies. Now is the time for action. Distinguished dignitaries, Excellencies, and delegates. This week we have experienced very difficult days. We have mourned the tragic loss of our colleagues, friends, and families. As we mourned them, we also found within ourselves a deep sense of purpose, fraternity, compassion, and determination. We are the peoples of the United Nations. Please join me in dedicating the 4th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly to our fallen colleagues, friends, and families who lost their lives in the pursuit and in the belief that we must and we can build a better future for this planet and our children together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. At this juncture, I would like to call upon His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta.
Your Excellency, Emmanuel Macron, President of the Republic of France, Your Excellency, Rajoelina, President of the Republic of Madagascar, Your Excellency, Sirisena, President of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, Your Excellency, Dr. Edward Ngirente, Prime Minister of the Republic of Rwanda, Mr. Slim Kisla, the President of the Fourth United Nations Environment Assembly, Ms. Amina Mohammed, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Ms. Kristalina, the Interim World Bank Group President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin my statement today on a sad and somber note, because it is with a very heavy heart that I convey my deepest sympathies to the families, friends, and colleagues of the victims of the tragic crash of the Ethiopian Airlines flight ET-302 from Addis Ababa last Sunday. Kenya and all Kenyans stand in prayer and solidarity with the people and the government of Ethiopia and with every person affected by this disastrous occurrence. We mourn the loss of all those who lost their lives, among whom were 32 Kenyans and several United Nations staff. We pray that the Almighty God might rest their souls in eternal peace. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm indeed honored today to welcome you all to Kenya for the fourth session of the United Nations Environmental Assembly, and we say, Karibuni Kenya. I trust that you will all enjoy your stay, and I go further to encourage all of you to take advantage of your presence here to sample some of the many attractions that Kenya has to offer. I take this opportunity also to congratulate the Acting Executive Director, Ms. Joyce Msuya, who for the last 5 months has led UNEP with commitment and diligence, and under whose able leadership this fourth session of the Assembly is taking place. I commend too the United Nations Secretary General for his recent appointment of Ms. Inga Anderson as the new Executive Director of UNEP, and I congratulate you, Ms. Anderson. I wish you all the best. As you prepare to take up the reins of this esteemed organization. And let me also take the opportunity to welcome the Secretary General's appointment of Mr. Wokne Gebuyu-Ngenewa, the current Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia, as the new Director General of UNON. We will continue to offer unwavering support to both UNEP and UNON, both as hosts as well as a member state of the United Nations, and we look forward to a re-energized agenda under this new leadership. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this session takes place at a time when the world is striving to address record levels of environmental degradation, food insecurity, poverty, and unemployment. Current global statistics are indeed quite sobering, and projections for the future generations are dire and demand urgent action by governments, communities, business, and individuals alike. This session's theme, as we have just heard, innovative solutions for environmental challenges and sustainable production and consumption, is therefore quite timely. It calls for practical and creative solutions, and countries must embrace a culture of innovation and invest in education and capacity building to facilitate the transition to a knowledge society. Needless to say, of course, finance and technology remain crucial in this regard. Distinguished guests, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development calls for urgent action towards poverty eradication for sustainable development. A strong linkage between the environment and social-economic developmental goals is essential. The delinking of social-economic development from escalating resource use and environmental degradation must also remain high on the agenda of sustainable development. Climate change continues to be a major threat to sustainable development worldwide. Its impact places disproportionately a heavy burden on the poor and vulnerable. We must therefore integrate climate action and sustainable development in our collective efforts to achieve the objectives under the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. I am pleased to note the recognition by this Assembly of our indigenous African traditions. I commend two indigenous groups drawn here from Kenya, whose work has been showcased for their contribution to the sustainable utilization of natural resources. The Mikoko Pamoja group from the coastal region conserves, manages, and enriches mangrove forests, and the Coastal Community Innovation Group focuses on seagrass. I also recognize the presence today and the participation in this assembly of our traditional and spiritual leaders, as well as representatives of the Council of Elders drawn from different regions of our country. I appreciate the role that our traditional and spiritual leaders play in environmental conservation, resolution of resource-based conflicts, and as custodians of our traditional indigenous knowledge, as well as our cultural heritage. I urge us all to learn from these traditional practices worldwide for the benefit of mankind. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, now more than ever, we must together find ways to reverse unsustainable agricultural practices and promote resource and energy efficiency. This session's theme brings to the fore the imperative to transform the way we produce and consume food. We must minimize waste and make our global food systems more sustainable. Only then can we improve food security and promote access to nutritious and affordable foods. Poor waste management is a major global challenge. Adopting a waste-to-energy innovation approach that converts waste from industrial activities into energy is one way to promote a circular economy. The Kenya Cleaner Production Strategy 2000 encourages resource efficiency and cleaner production in manufacturing that embraces the 5 R's philosophy of reduce, reuse, recycle, reformulate, and remanufacture, cutting emissions into the environment to acceptable levels. My administration has also put in place several policies and legal instruments to control environmental pollution, including imposing a ban on single use of plastic carrier bags. The Rio +20 UN Conference on Sustainable Development in 2012 agreed on the need to support UNEP. The outcome document, titled The Future We Want, calls for the strengthening of the role of UNEP as the leading global environmental authority and authoritative advocate for the global environment. Kenya remains committed to re-energizing and strengthening the headquarter functions of UNEP in Nairobi and echoes the General Assembly's call for stable, adequate, and increased financing for UNEP. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, the record level also of attendance from heads of state to youth, from private sector to community-based organization, no doubt demonstrates the critical role played by the environment on the global agenda. I trust that you will all, together, forge new paths and communicate bold, new political messages that enhance sustainable development and innovative solutions. I therefore wish you all very fruitful discussions, and I look forward to positive, innovative, and far-reaching outcomes. I thank you all for your attention, and I wish you every success in your deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your commitment to environmental matters and for the role that you play as host of the UN Environment Programme and its governing body. Ladies and gentlemen, now I am honored to invite His Excellency, Mr. Emmanuel Macron, President of the Republic of France, to address the Assembly.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. President of the General Assembly of the United Nations, Madam Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen, heads of state and of government, distinguished ministers, the distinguished Deputy Minister of the World Bank, Madam Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations Environment Programme, congratulations on your election. Dear friends, thank you, first of all, President Kenyatta, for the welcome and the example, the welcome here, the hosting of this One Planet Summit we've just held. Your presence is also a sign of leadership in the field of the environment on the African continent, and thank you very much for that. And I should like, Mr. President, as I did earlier, in opening our One Planet Summit, to also refer to the victims of the tragic air crash between Addis Ababa and Nairobi. These were our children, 9 French people, a number of members of the Secretariat, members of NGOs present here, many Kenyans, and many perished in this crash because they were working on the environment for this summit, and I should like to extend a special recognition to their memory. Dear friends, President Kenyatta has just said, and the President of the General Assembly has also said very ably, we know that the agenda that we have is essential, and perhaps even more now because the United Nations has placed it at the heart of its own agenda. And as I said earlier, the observations have been made a long time ago. Many heads of state and of government well before me, and sometimes decades earlier, have denounced scientists and the IPCC, which told us recently that we weren't even on course on the Paris Agreement. So today, in combating global warming, in the field of biodiversity, in all our environmental struggle, we know we have mobilized our forces, we're organizing, but we haven't yet arrived. And for our generation, this is maybe even worse, because we can't say that we didn't know. And our responsibility is thus tremendous. Many people hesitated, waited. Some are still hesitating, saying, well, we're not sure, we don't really know. Are you really sure that these are the consequences? Now our young people are pushing us and saying, you're not going fast enough. They're demonstrating quite correctly, saying, if you don't go fast enough, that's because you don't want to. You're not capable. There must be hidden interests. You're not telling us everything. And so today, we have to act. In all of these areas, we have a lot that remains to be done on a national level, on a regional level, and I'm not going to go back to that, but the international agenda is essential as far as I'm concerned, and I wanted to just share some thoughts on it with you. First of all, combating global warming and working to reduce our emissions and to keep our trajectory that we collectively committed ourselves to. The Paris Agenda, dear Laurent Fabius, was defined in Paris in 2015 during the COP21. The worst was avoided in Katowice at the end of last year, thanks to the mobilization of the Secretary General of the United Nations. And here I should like to welcome, salute his tremendous work and mobilization over the last few weeks. But we have not yet reached where we should be. We need, obviously, to finish the signing and ratification of the agreement, but in addition, we now have to add to it with our own work. And here, the upcoming COPs will be determinant, and mobilization of a number of our friends, Chile in particular, are also very important, and we will be involved. We need to be very specific in terms of how to reduce emissions in our own national strategies, with our businesses, with our investors, via our laws. We need then to have specific solutions. That's the One Planet Summit agenda, inter alia, with the World Bank and with the United Nations. And here on this subject, remobilizing international financing for businesses, NGOs, governments, having coalitions for specific action, working throughout the globe to reduce our emissions. But we need to go further on this. The Secretary General of the United Nations has asked me and the Prime Minister of Jamaica for the September summit to work on the famous 100 billion, the capacity to remobilize financing from states, developed states, the richest states, towards developing states, those who have to still step up their solutions, where we will be involved. But here I wish very solemnly to say how I see this. There are two reefs. The first would be to say we're just going to paint over in green everything that we're all do. We're all specialists in this. Welcome to the greenwashing world. That's not something we're going to do. The second major risk is that we say these 100 billion to do the same thing that we've always done and just continue to do. And we would be wrong. As far as I'm concerned, the heart of our reply in terms of financing the environmental transition that we need to have in the September summit and that we've started to work on within the One Planet discussion is how to have an in-depth change in the financing of model for our economies. How do we transform the modern global market economy to integrate environmental criteria so as to have international investors, sovereign funds and major banks meet environmental standards, and how all this massive amount of money can go towards sustainable financing. That is our challenge. And the Africa pledges that we heard today is at the heart of this challenge, because if we are able to do this, if we are able to draw specific conclusions from the Paris Agreement, remobilize financing, both public and private, on these objectives, and step up innovative solutions throughout on the field, as we saw for the African continent earlier, with decentralized, more rapid models, sometimes less costly, going against a number of entrenched interests and going against what's been done for decades in the continent, then we can succeed. That is what will be at the heart of this collective work against global warming and diminishing emissions. Then the second objective is for protecting nature and biodiversity, and that is a twin with the first aim. We're somewhat behind in our collective activities, but we have solutions to this. This is both an environmental and an environmental response in our today's world. We have many solutions for naturally capturing carbon and for inclusive economic development, both economically and socially. And what you've just launched in terms of combating deforestation is essential here. And here again, the upcoming months will be very significant. France will have the honor of hosting the World Congress on Nature in Marseille, and we have to be up to the challenge of global mobilization, and we'll go to the 2020 COP15 in China, which needs to be a major rendezvous for international commitment and specific commitments towards biodiversity. So not only stopping what is underway, this decrease in the number of species, deforestation, but we also have to take specific actions to reconquer what we've lost. And as part of the One Planet comment, we've already seen work done in the Pacific, in the Caribbean, in Europe, in Africa, so as to start working to combat, to work for nature, for biodiversity, because that's our agenda, and it is essential. And it is complementary with the first. And so here again, an in-depth transformation of our productive ecosystems is necessary. We have to create a real circular economy, one that will make it possible to combat waste. As President Kenyatta, you said, manage to really mobilize to reduce plastic consumption and production, facilitate its sorting and recycling, and this is how we will be able to combat the worst contemporary pollution of our oceans and seas away, and something that is suffocating our planet and damaging biodiversity. Again, these are very specific actions by governments and economic actors. These are changes, jobs that have to be destroyed on one side, recreated in others. That is the only way, however, that we can build a world where all of us collectively can move forward. And here again, we will be collectively working in a pragmatic way, and you'll see over the next few months our agenda will be very specific in this area. And then the multilateral agenda has to accompany this effort in combating global warming and loss of biodiversity. And I see two major areas of mobilization which need to accompany and support the September summit on this. The first is G7. France this year will be presiding over the G7. I think that the G7 no longer should be simply a forum for states no longer capable of agreeing on a joint communique on the climate. Nobody can understand that anymore. The G7 needs to deal with climate issues and I respect the sovereign choices of each member state, but I've decided that there will not be a final statement. That's easier. Anyway, nobody reads them. But there will be specific mobilization and action that will be very effective. And as the G7, with my partners, will be working on combating inequalities, we'll have one session on environmental inequality and one session with the United Nations and the World Bank and all of the associated countries to have a G7 pledge, a very clear G7 commitment on the environment. Some people will be working harder on global warming, others will be working harder and more rapidly on plastic or whatever actions there may be, but we have to be very clear on that, around that table. We need to reply to the mobilization of the international community on the subject of the environment. But that will be for the end of August in Biarritz and Paris, and I will mobilize all of the partners of the One Planet Summit for this. Then the second point is that I believe we need to have new rights accorded to our citizens. We need our citizens. We need to have the anger of our youth, because that's what pushes us to go faster and more vigorously. We need to allow our citizens to push us forward when we don't take the necessary action. So that is why I really believe firmly in the Global Compact for the Environment. We need to change our international law and build an international environmental law that corresponds to this collective mobilization. This is an initiative initially launched by civil society, noting that to date there was no solid international environmental law. Of course, there are many legal texts, but they are fragmentary, incomplete, and sometimes contradictory. And so, taking advantage of these gaps and contradictions everywhere, we see behavior which contributes to the degradation of the biosphere with complete impunity. A lot of work has been done by lawyers throughout the world, and mobilization in particular in France, and I'd like to salute what Mr. Laurent Fabius did in this connection. He worked very hard with many of his colleagues throughout the world and Supreme Courts and the best legal experts to build a proposal. And we are France, but I think that this is something that the international environment can back, international community can back, this international compact, to have a legal basis to identify anti-environmental behavior and to prosecute those responsible everywhere in the same way. This is a covenant that is something concrete and potentially revolutionary. For it to be specific and concrete, it needs to be legally binding. Now, I can hear people saying, oh, yes, great, we're going to have a legal agreement, but it will be a declaration. It won't be legally binding. It will be non-legally binding. We know that all too well. And we'll just have words. But the words won't change actions. So we believe that given the situation before us, we need to really have a law with binding rules that can be applied internationally. The biosphere is threatened with collapse, and humanity is living on borrowed time. We can't just respond with lofty principles without giving them concrete scope. That's why in 2020 and 2021, we need to complete this global covenant for the environment. It is absolutely indispensable and will be complementary to the work that I've mentioned. Together, we have to create the first international treaty for the environment, which for states, firms, for citizens throughout the world, it will be a compass. Each new subject that we work on throughout the world, each time there's been the same reluctance in terms of international law. Each time. But each time we've been able to wake up and act. And on the environment, the time is now. Well then, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, that's what I wanted to share with you. And say once again how happy I am to be here with you here in Nairobi, and to say how deeply I am convinced that the challenges before us are tremendous, because they are the result of many past errors, sometimes a refusal to see at times hidden interests, and interests that we understand all too well. But we need to see. I'm not among those who think it's too late. I'm not among those who believe that if you're a supporter of the environment throughout the world, all that means is to denounce things and say everything is wrong. We have to work and bring together our society despite various reluctances, but ensure that everyone finds their place, never cede to cynicism and inaction, but nor should we simply deplore events, but we have to say that our generation is the one which needs to decide to act forcefully, clearly, and with determination in our countries and continents and on this international agenda of the United Nations, and we will be fully involved in this. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Je vous salue.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause as President Kenyatta is going to bid farewell to President Macron. And I invite the choir to sing.
lions live tonight.
Near the village, the peaceful village,
The lions live tonight.
near the village, the quiet village,
The lions live tonight.
Hush, my darling, don't fear, my darling.
The lions live tonight.
Hush, my darling, don't cry, my darling.
The lions live tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, I call the Assembly to order. I ask you for silence and find your seat. And we continue. I now wish to invite His Excellency Mr. Maithripala Sirisena, President of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, to address the Assembly.
Good afternoon. His Excellency, your Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, President of the Assembly, Deputy Secretary General UN, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Excellencies, permit me at the outset to extend my sincere appreciations to the government and people of Kenya for the warm welcome and generous hospitality extended to me and my delegation at this assembly. May I also commend the government of Kenya and the United Nations Environment Programme for the excellent arrangement made for the assembly. Sri Lanka signed the Paris Agreement, which is unprecedented global commitment to combat climate change, since our country has been listed as the second highest in the Global Climate Risk Index of 2019. Implementing of climate action are very vital to us. As I stated in my keynote address at the third forum of Asia-Pacific Ministers and Environment Authorities in Singapore in January 2019, I wish to reiterate that it is our prime duty to assure the right to live in a safe environment and introduce environmentally sound economic trends that build upon sustainable global economic indices. Mr. President, being a follower of the Buddhist philosophy, I firmly believe that we are responsible for securing the sustenance of not only mankind, but also the life on earth as a whole. Mr. President, I observe that poverty is a significant cause for global environmental problems. Environment degradation and poverty are closely interrelated and inseparable, particularly in developing countries. Human-induced ecosystem degradation has caused multiple challenges impacting air, water, marine, soil, and all forms of ecosystem. This problem at the same time provided us opportunities to be innovative. I am pleased and excited about the timely theme of UNEA 4, which has captured most challenges faced by countries, including island nations such as ours. Today we are meeting here to endorse the Ministerial Declaration on innovative solutions for environmental challenges and sustainable consumption and production. Mr. President, my country has initiated in co-sponsors for resolution for UNEA 4, along with other partnering countries on conservation of mangroves, marine litter and microplastic, solid waste management and food losses and waste. I am pleased to state that Sri Lanka is the first country in the South Asian region to prepare a sustainable consumption and production policy with the assistance of Switch Asia Policy Support Initiative. Sri Lanka has taken several ground-level smart initiatives for policy formulation and implementation toward greening under my government's blue-green approach covering both land and ocean. The national policy on urban air quality management ensures clean air for a healthy nation or the Clean Air 2025 Action Plan. Oil-based transport and power sector have been identified as the main source of emission, therefore importation of vehicle were restricted to Euro 4 standard. In energy, we are rapidly moving to integrate renewable energy such as solar, wind, wave and biogas to our energy mix to minimize oil and coal use. Sri Lanka joined the UN Clean Seas campaign alongside UNEA 3 and developed a roadmap with a view to minimize land-based ocean pollution. Sri Lanka is implementing a river basin and integrated coastal management approach to prevent ocean and water resources pollution that also include plastic and chemicals. Furthermore, as the Minister of Environment, I have taken a step to ban manufactures and use of polythene products such as high-density polyethylene, shopping bags, carry bags, lunch sheet and lunch boxes. In addition, regulations have been enforced to prohibit the open burning of polythene. During the recently concluded Commonwealth Head of Common Government meeting, Sri Lanka pledged to be the champion in the action group for restoration of mangroves under the Commonwealth Blue Charter. Approximately 9,000 hectares of mangrove forests have been declared as a conservation forest. Mr. President, considering that an urgent attention of all nations is needed to protect coral reef as one of the most sensitive ecosystems in the world, Sri Lanka has stepped forward to obtain the membership of International Coral Reef Initiative with the intention of networking with other states. We have taken steps to minimize unsustainable and destructive fishing practices that are damaging to corals. Several initiatives have been taken in line with Marine Environment Pollution Control Strategy 2030. We identified the challenges of pollution due to intensive sea routes linking west to east, demonstrating Sri Lanka's commitment towards achieving the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Sri Lanka was the first country to establish a separate ministry with the portfolio for sustainable development and establish the Sustainable Development Council to ensure that Sri Lanka meets the Sustainable Development Goals. In January 2019, I declare open the first green city designed and built by my government, namely the Laggala Green City. This new city was built under the Morgahakanda Kaluganga multipurpose reservoir project. This city will accommodate over 3,000 families who were initially displaced when the Morgahakanda reservoir was first filled with water. We have planned to build more such green cities in the country. In my capacity as the Minister of Environment, I commenced a program in 2015 known as Vanaropa. The purpose is to increase the depleted forest cover from 29% to 32% to conserve biodiversity and the natural ecosystem and promote the management of commercial forestry and various other activities. Month of October every year is declared as the National Tree Planting Month, dedications to raise awareness and tree planting island-wide. Each year with the voluntary collaboration of various government departments, organizations and school children and the citizens of the country, approximately 2 million plants were distributed and planted. Fruit tree saplings were distributed to school children for planting, and financial benefits were offered to maintain the plants growing. Mr. President, agriculture is the main source of livelihood for people living in the rural areas of Sri Lanka, and it has much potential for greening and to be climate smart. We like to see sustainable consumption and production, and science and technology are applied in our agriculture. This will not only help strengthening the financial position of the rural farmers and various others involved in the process, but also that of the country as a whole. One of the biggest challenges faced by the farmers in Sri Lanka is the uncertain climatic conditions. While one year there is an abundance of rain that creates a flood-like situation, the next season the rainfall is little to the extent that the same region experiences drought. Sri Lanka is searching to adopt the system of cloud seeding, which is said to be successful in some countries. Mr. President, recently, in October 2018, we discovered a type of caterpillar that caused destruction in many farmlands, destroying over 80,000 hectares of corn cultivation within a period of 1 month. That was a grave threat to our food production and a serious challenge to the environment. However, 3 research groups from the Faculty of Agriculture of Peradeniya University, Sri Lanka, were able to find solutions to suppress the growth and control the spreading of the caterpillar. Also, as a country rich in nature, culture and heritage, we capitalize on nature and nature-related sustainable businesses to drive our socio-economic development. In that context, the UNEA provides a sound base and tools towards managing and using nature. Mr. President, I am pleased to announce that we are hosting the 18th Conference of Parties of CITES in Sri Lanka in this May. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, concluding my statement, I wish to extend our appreciations to the United Nations Environment Programme for its efforts on the environment front, as well as for the valuable support extended to Sri Lanka for better environment management. I wish this forum all success. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, for a statement. Next, I am honored to invite His Excellency Mr. Rajoelina, President of the Republic of Madagascar, to address the Assembly.
Excellences, Madame.
Excellencies, Secretaries of the United Nations, Interim President of the World Bank, President of the UN Environment Assembly, Director General of the UN Environment Programme, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, heads of state and government, honourable guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to share my great delight I feel at being among you during this UN Environment Assembly. We are here together, great numbers of us, determined and interested in dealing with the urgent issue of our climate, which is our responsibility. I'd also like to talk to you about the great challenges, the great environmental challenges that Madagascar has to deal with in order to accelerate its development and to make this development sustainable. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, you must know that Madagascar has recently undergone an important step in its history and for its future through peaceful democratic transition. We now have a more mature democracy which makes us ready to deal with these issues. Madagascar's economic growth is closely linked to the country's great environmental challenges. We would like to make Madagascan biodiversity a motor for growth and also to deal with the complex issue of green industrialisation and sustainable development. This is very important for Madagascar. When you look at a world map in the southeast of Africa, Madagascar can be easily seen. However, it is often ignored and often little is known about it. However, it is a beautiful island. It's a real jewel of the Indian Ocean. In the world ranking of countries with mega biodiversity, Madagascar is #1 of the top 10. We also have 85% of species and the majority of global biodiversity. More than 200,000 known species are in Madagascar, and many of these don't exist anywhere else in the world. We also have 5,000 kilometres of coast, 50,000 kilometres of mangroves, as well as many lakes and lagoons. Madagascar is a true nature sanctuary that we really need to preserve, and it is a source of real pride for Madagascans. However, it is one of the most threatened ecosystems on the planet. Our beautiful island is one of the countries that is the most exposed to climate change, in spite of the fact that it is one of the least polluting countries. Climate change is a reality for Madagascar. The damage caused by climate change is a real issue for our country. To date, no national initiative, no environmental policy has been adopted. But that was before. Now we are fully aware. The political will is present more than ever, and we are optimistic. Madagascar is ready to commit to green growth. We have a blessed island and an uncommon natural heritage. This wealth of natural resources is a great opportunity for us. Ladies and gentlemen, next year we will celebrate the 60th anniversary of the return of independence of Madagascar. Our country and African brothers, such as the Côte d'Ivoire, have started the process of development at the same time. However, to give you an example, the population of the Côte d'Ivoire has 2,000 megawatts of energetic production compared to Madagascar, which is barely 400 megawatts, which mainly comes from fossil fuels. However, moving forward, we believe that times are changing. Now we are committing to doubling or even tripling our energy production with a minimum of 800 megawatts over 5 years, mainly using renewable energies. 90% of the infrastructure that we will develop will produce green energy. We will mainly be using solar panels, wind, hydroelectric energy, and geothermal energy. This revolution demands that we are all behind it. Awareness-raising campaigns have been launched, and this must be based on exemplary behaviour of decision-makers and leaders. We must make strong decisions today in order to secure the Madagascan future. That means, in Madagascan, respect the land of our ancestors and look after the lands of our children. Madagascar has come out of the dark, and in order for us to fully do this, we need innovative energy solutions. Because today, only 15% of the Madagascan population has access to electricity. To quickly provide access to electricity for the largest number of Madagascan families possible, the best solution is providing solar kits, particularly for people who live in isolated areas. It's difficult for these populations to access the local networks. Madagascar has taken a big step when it comes to changing consumption habits. For centuries, Madagascans cooked food on wood or coal. However, last March, for the first time, we started using different energy sources to try to gradually change from using wood to using a less polluting energy, ethanol-based energy. And by doing this, we are saving a hectare of forest per family. This is a great initiative when it comes to combating deforestation. And thanks to this initiative, a pan-African platform, piloted by my wife, aims to save the forests both in Madagascar and the rest of Africa. It is a very simple calculation. If we sell a certain number of these heating systems, we'll be saving millions of hectares of forests. We are ready to make this energy change. We need to start planting more forests in Madagascar, and this has become a state priority. Since the very beginning of my mandate, I adopted strong measures to initiate a national reforestation campaign. Our aim is to plant trees in a surface area of 40,000 hectares per year, with a minimum of 40,000 trees per year. We would like all citizens to be behind this so that we have collective reforestation action. Each Madagascan citizen should plant at least 10 trees per year. And we will implement this plan over 22 regions.
Very frequently, Madagascar has been called upon, has been called red, but it will now be a green island thanks to our reforestation plan. His Excellency, Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, our presence here attests to Madagascar's determination to join with the entire United Nations family in reforestation and the preservation of our forests. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Green Revolution is underway in Madagascar, and in parallel to the activities in household sorting, we're also involving economic actors, asking them to give pride of place to renewable energy in production units for goods and services. And here, a transition to energy resources that are clean will be mandatory for all all business circles, and a major role will be played by this in opening our green economy in Madagascar. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Madagascar has always been forgotten in projects and passed under the radar of donors, but that's going to change because the political will is there. The leadership is strong, young, bold, and pragmatic. From now on, Madagascar is on the path of a green economy with a high-speed train at its head. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your statement. And now, I am honored to invite His Excellency the Right Honorable Edouard Ngirente, Prime Minister of the Republic of Rwanda, to address the Assembly.
Your Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellency Sirisena, President of Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, Your Excellency Andry Rajoelina, President of the Republic of Madagascar, Excellencies, Head of Delegations, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure and honor to attend the fourth session of the United Nations Environment Assembly representing His Excellency Paul Kagame, the President of the Republic of Rwanda. I wish to convey to you all his warm greetings and best wishes for a successful meeting here in Nairobi. I wish to thank President Kenyatta for hosting this assembly. The Rwanda delegation appreciates the warm hospitality that our Kenyan brothers and sisters extended to us since our arrival. We are gathered here today at a critical time in the humanity's relationship with nature. Never before have the pressures on our environment been greater. In many parts of the world, climate change is already affecting our societies. Economies and ecosystems are struggling to keep up with the rate of warming. Therefore, this United Nations Environment Assembly themed innovative solutions for environmental challenges and sustainable consumption and production is a good opportunity to define a new development model that is clean, green, and climate-friendly. We strongly believe that resolution from this assembly will complement other existing global strategies and a commitment to address climate change. One of them is the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol that aims at phasing out the use of potent warming gases known as HFCs by more than 80% over the next 30 years. The government of Rwanda thanks the 69 nations that have already ratified the Kigali Amendment and encourages all member states to do so in order to fast-track the phase-out of these warming gases and strengthen global climate actions. If we implement the Kigali Amendment with energy efficiency, we can avoid an additional half of degrees Celsius of warming by the end of the century. In this regard, I wish to express my appreciation to President Kenyatta and President Macron for convening this One Planet Summit on the sideline of the UNEA 4 and for their commitment to climate actions. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, water resource management and reducing dependence on biomass as a source of cooking energy are two critical aspects of climate action in Africa, and it necessitates innovative solutions. I encourage nations across the continent to work together to address these challenges for health and well-being of all. I would like to use this opportunity to mention that my country, Rwanda, in partnership with the UN Environment, Global Environment Facility, the World Economic Forum, and other governments, recently established the African Circular Economy Alliance. The mission of the Alliance is to advance the uptake of the circular economy across the continent through sharing experience and facilitating a new partnership between public and private institutions. I invite all African nations to join the Alliance. Our common goal should be the creation of a zero-waste society that will both address environmental issues, boost economic growth, and job creation. To build a clean, green, and resilient societies requires a robust policy framework that protects and rehabilitates nature, gives priority to the health of citizens, and fosters green investment. In this context, Rwanda was proud to initiate and host in November last year the African Green Growth Forum to fast-track green growth across the continent. The next African Green Growth Forum will take place in 2020 in Kigali. We take this opportunity to invite you all to this forum. Rwanda would like to reiterate its commitment to promoting sustainable management of environment and natural resources and respecting its international obligation as well as we transition toward a green economy. In conclusion, I wish to commend the joint effort of Republic of Kenya and Republic of France, the co-chairs of this assembly, and the United Nations for organizing this assembly. As leaders, we should be ambitious and innovative in our effort to address transitional environment challenges for our nation's sustainable growth and development. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your statement. And now I have the great honor to invite Her Excellency Amina Mohammed, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, to address the Assembly.
Thank you. Your Excellency, President Uhuru Kenyatta, the President of the Republic of Kenya, our distinguished heads of state and government, President of our UN Assembly, the interim president, my sister, Kristalina Georgieva of the World Bank, our acting head of our UN Environment Program, colleagues, friends, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Karibuni sana UN. I'd like to thank at this point the President Uhuru Kenyatta for his generosity and hospitality in being with us at this conference. It's an incredibly important time for us. We are at a juncture where we need to take our words to actions. But let me also add my condolences to the government and people of Kenya, but also the government of Ethiopia, and all the bereaved relatives of those from many nations who lost their loved ones in last week's tragic air crash. Of course, many of the UN family, from our staff to that of the World Bank, to, of course, our NGOs and delegates from very many of our member states. I would like to join you in sorrow, but in strong conviction, as the President of the Assembly said, let us carry on their fight in their name for people, planet. And then I say, we also join you in solidarity and the resolution to finally turn the tides towards ambitious policies that enable strong economies and protect the health of our planet. This is the fourth year this Assembly has grown from strength to strength in highlighting and proposing solutions to some of the most important environmental challenges of our time. We continue to count on the wisdom of this body because globally our environment is under extreme pressure, and we've heard that from our leaders this morning. We're at an unprecedented turning point in our planet, and this UN Environment Assembly is an opportunity to change that trajectory from one of impacts and loss to one of solutions and actions. I just looked at one of our Time magazine covers. 15 years ago, Kofi Annan was on that cover. And what it said in the corner was the meltdown of the Arctic. And in the other corner it said, ending wars, making our leaders twitch. 15 years later, we need to know that urgency doesn't mean decades. It needs to happen now. The focus of this UN Environment Assembly is on innovative solutions for environmental challenges and sustainable consumption and production. Today, I'd like to highlight the solutions and innovations we need across three key themes. The first, sustainable consumption and production and supply chains. The second, biodiversity loss and conservation. And last but not least, climate change. First, let's look at our patterns of consumption and production, the focus of this assembly. In 2017, resources extracted from Mother Earth reached 90 billion metric tons. Less than 10% of those resources were recycled back into the economy. Millions of tons of plastic are flowing into our oceans with devastating consequences for marine life. Every day, we live with the shortcomings of a linear economic model based on take, make, and dispose. These shortcomings are exemplified by the way we produce, use, and discard mobile telephones. I'm sure everyone in this room has one. These phones that we use are all typically built with at least 60 different metals, from graphite to silicon. Extraction of many of these metals is extremely harmful to the environment and to the people and communities living in those environments and extracting. Meanwhile, at the other end of production and consumption chain, some 45 million tons of electronic waste, worth about $55 billion, are generated every year. And this figure, sadly, is growing, with less than 20% today recycled or reused. Rising levels of discarded electronic waste pose risks to human health and climate change, seeping toxins into the soil and water tables, affecting the quality of water we drink, and emitting methane, which contributes to rising greenhouse gas emissions. Our solution to break out of these unsustainable cycles of consumption and production is clear. We must change our perception that economic progress requires a depletion of natural resources. Inspiring actions by civil society and governments at all levels and corporations show us that we can, in fact, achieve greater economic benefits from innovative approaches to how we eat, we purchase, travel, and discard waste. For example, the initiative in Kiribati Islands provides families with unique hydroponic systems to make food without soil. Large hotel chains such as a Hilton have recently committed to reduce water consumption and waste by 50%. And countries are beginning to entirely eliminate single-use plastics. Costa Rica intends to phase them out by 2021 and India by 2022. These are just a few examples of the transitions we need to more sustainable consumption and production habits. We must focus on creating products with few components and products that last rather than tossing them after a single use. And we must support the regrowth of all renewable resources to ensure that they are available for future generations. We must, in effect, create a circular economy. And as President Uhuru was just speaking to me now, we talked about actually the circular economy and no waste was in fact indigenous to Africa. As we grew up as children, nothing went to waste. So it's a pleasure to see our elders here today remind us that there is something in our culture that we can bring now for future generations. Second, I would like to turn to biodiversity loss, which is also linked to our unsustainable consumption and production habits. Our use of land and resources to fuel our economy leads to the destruction of vital ecosystems and habitats. As a former Minister of Environment, I witnessed this firsthand with the effort of remediation in Ogoniland, the largest ever oil disaster. The Global Recourse Outlook, released earlier this week, finds that extraction and processing of resources is responsible for a staggering 90% of biodiversity loss and water stress globally. Since 1970, the extent of wetlands in Europe and Central Asia has declined by 50%, and around 40% of land in Western Asia is at risk of desertification. The potential impact on health, on economy, and society of ongoing biodiversity loss is tremendous. For example, the economic value of nature in the Americas is estimated at approximately $24.3 trillion annually. Solutions are available to safeguard ecosystems and the biological diversity of this planet. We do need innovative solutions to manage protected areas, and we need to promote more sustainable use and management of terrestrial and aquatic resources. For example, in South Africa, a tax break is being tested, which benefits landowners who declare protected areas on their land. In India, a woman farmers group is working to conserve traditional crops using seed banks and traditional farming practices. And biodiversity enterprise funds continue to grow in numbers, investing into small and medium enterprises and cooperatives which prioritize conservation. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, my third point today, looming above all of our work, is climate change. It threatens our natural ecosystems, our agriculture, our economies, our health, our security, our future. Climate change, too, is linked to our unsustainable consumption and production habits. We learned this week that 53% of emissions are caused by the extraction and processing of these resources. Last year alone, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change said we have only 12 years to change course. Time is fast running out. Otherwise, we will endure irreversible consequences. So the time is now to take a big, ambitious leap. In Katowice, countries adopted a rulebook to guide their efforts to combat climate change and to move to greater ambition. We now have a comprehensive legal framework to implement the Paris Agreement, adopted by members of the UNFCCC and welcomed by authorities in the private sector. And on September the 23rd this year, the Secretary General will convene a Climate Action Summit in New York to reinforce the ambition, call, and urge us all to accelerate climate action. We need ambition and we need urgency. The Secretary-General is calling on leaders to come to the summit not with another speech, but with a plan for reducing emissions by 45% over the next decade and reaching the goal of zero net emissions in 2050. A plan to decarbonize electricity and to finally build more sustainable infrastructure in cities. A plan to create not only green jobs, but decent green jobs. A plan ambitious enough and credible enough to convince all our people taking to the streets that they are taken very seriously. Around the world, many innovative solutions are already being developed. In Singapore, the government has engaged in extensive greening efforts that have helped reduce energy demand and thus reducing the need for air conditioning. In the US, a company called Solida Technologies is planning to tweak the way in which concrete is made with 70% lower emissions. So we can go beyond governments to the public sector when we look for climate action. The Climate Summit will promote the scaling up and the replication of such solutions. It will raise ambition and action across following areas: energy, industry, finance, carbon pricing, nature-based solutions, resilience and adaptation, the infrastructure, cities and local action. In addition, the summit will aim to mobilize public opinion and propose solutions to the political and social challenges that impede ambitious climate action. The summit will be a moment of global ambition and inclusive multilateralism. It will demonstrate that solutions exist and are ready to be deployed at scale by governments and all actors. The governments and non-governmental stakeholders will have a plan to set the world on a sustainable and equitable path. Ladies and gentlemen, the call really is to action. As we gather here in Nairobi during a time of unprecedented urgency and the need for action, our work here this week is heavier than anyone had expected. Our urgency and heaviness is compounded with the extreme loss of bright environmental leaders, youth trailblazers who were nominated by their government to travel to Nairobi to advocate for environmental protection and marine conservation, a staff member of UNEP who was a committed gender advocate and passionate champion of sustainable development and the goals, and the links to the environment, and a World Bank staff member who dedicated his life to connecting people around climate change solutions, from storytelling to photography. These environmental and climate actors, these concerned actors in our human community, and the many other victims whose time does not allow me to name, came to Nairobi with a purpose, as you all have. There are no words for these times of loss, but we must honor these leaders with an urgency in the work that we do. With each new campaign, new change in our consumption patterns, or fund we will help start, we are taking strides. It must be done by each and every one of us, individually and collectively. I plead with you to internalize your responsibility and to turn your concerns into actions. All here today, I ask you to bring young people into the center of your work, especially our women and our girls. Ask them to be disruptive in finding solutions to the way in which companies produce, to the loss of biodiversity in our world, and to their national governments' responses to climate change. In the past 2 days, I've been inspired by the bold partnerships, ideas, and innovations I've seen in support of the hashtag #SolveDifferent campaign. My last point is to stress the importance of partnerships to strengthen and scale our collective work. National governments must provide spaces to illuminate and scale this growing groundswell of action on climate and the environment. Make sure that you bring in city leaders to your policy-making decisions. Cities are the closest levels of government to the people and can act as innovation labs for national government solutions. The private sector leaders are devising some of the most ambitious commitments on environmental protection and climate action, from private equity funds dedicated to biodiversity to 100% renewable energy-fueled supply chains. Let's take these ideas, let's scale them so that people everywhere can see that a sustainable future is not only possible, but it is happening. It just needs more urgency and more scale. We must show the world that it is not only necessary, but imminently possible to reshape our global economy into one that rewards careful stewardship and punishes waste and pollution. Let us turn 2019 into a year of transformative solutions. I thank you.
Thank you for your remarks, Ms. Mohammed. Your presence here is a strong indication that the United Nations hold the UN Environment Assembly with great regard as the highest authority on environmental matters. Thank you. And I now am honored to invite the Interim President of the World Bank, Ms. Kristalina Georgieva, to address the Assembly.
Thank you very much, Mr. President of the General Assembly, Your Excellency President Kenyatta, President Sirisena, President Rajoelina, Prime Minister Ngirente, dear Amina Mohammed, ladies and gentlemen, my institution, the World Bank Group, has gone a long way in embracing environmental sustainability since 1992 in Rio. I was hired in 1993 in response to the pledge of the bank to bring 100 environmental professionals and as an environmental economy of development everywhere. We have done well, and as a result, our shareholders just last year boosted our financial resources with the largest in our history capital increase, 50% increase of our financial capacity. And we also have been granted record levels for our Fund for the Poor to do what is necessary, and that means to promote sustainability everywhere. So let me briefly talk about what means for us to have more resources when I am with this audience. First, the World Bank Group traditionally brings a lot of skills and capacity to assess the economic impacts of actions, including what it means to degrade our ecosystems and what it means to invest in sustainable manner. We know that globally, the cost of environmental degradation ranges somewhere between 5 and 10% of GDP. We go country by country by country to see what exactly is causing it and what can be done. And then we direct our own investments to address these root causes of degradation. We are traditionally the institution that takes very good look into what makes good policies. And we know that harmful subsidies, be it of fossil fuels or of use of water in unsustainable manner, they are bad for the environment, but they are ultimately bad for the economy and the well-being of people. So we work relentlessly to promote shift in subsidies from bad to good. For example, in agriculture today, OECD tells us there are $570 billion of subsidies, and only 1/3 of them go for the right purpose, to promote research and development, to promote sustainable use of land, water, forestry. 2/3 of these subsidies ought to be redirected. We are not saying take them away. We are saying use them to promote sustainable agriculture. Third, we have been on the front line of promoting shift in national accounts, so pollution would not count as a plus in the economy, but restoration of land and forests will. And I want to pledge to you today that we would take this work forward by seriously investing in the ecosystem services and what value they bring to the economy. And I hope that in the next assembly, we all would know more about our natural capital and the role it plays. Secondly, we at the World Bank recognize that we ought to invest in nature so nature can help us. And in that regard, I want to announce today 2 areas in which we are stepping up our work. The first area is in sustainable land management and forestry restoration. I would like to recognize the Secretary General commitment to a decade of land restoration. And I don't know whether the Minister of Environment of El Salvador, Lina Paul, is in the audience. If she is, thank you for pushing for this decade. Our contribution from the World Bank Group would be to fund at least 120 million hectares of sustainable forest management, land restoration, reforestation. This is the way we want to be part of this action. The second area where we are stepping up our engagement is the health of our oceans. Like the forests, they are the lungs on which life on this planet depends. But we have been bad stewards of our oceans. We pollute them, we overfish them, we eliminate the mangroves that are protecting us against storms and are so critical for fisheries. So we have launched ProBlue with the support of Norway, Canada, Germany, Sweden, Iceland, Portugal, Denmark, France, and the European Union. And ProBlue is exactly about reversing what we do. And President Kenyatta, I was so very pleased on the plane to hear the stewardess saying, if you have any plastic bag, do not take it from the plane. Congratulations to you and all those who fight plastic pollution. Since we have announced ProBlue, we now have over $1 billion of investment. We put our money where our mouth is. Let me finish last but not least with a simple statement. Yes, we have to use all tools we have in our disposal, but when we don't have the tools, we have to invent them. We at the World Bank have invented green bonds in 2008. Last year, we have added blue bonds to the green bonds, and we want to have, on top of it, the forest protection bonds, and I know that there are people here with whom we talk about that already. We also want to make sure that we can expand the use of the emission reduction payment agreements so they help us to protect forests. And we are currently working with the Democratic Republic of Congo and Mozambique to be the first 2 African countries to sign these agreements with. Time has advanced, so let me go straight to where we all are in our hearts, mourning for the people we lost. The best memorial we can build for them is our action. And when we pledge, then we do. I want to finish with a short statement in Swahili. Nosema na kutenda. Say and do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Georgieva. With your presence here, we look forward to strengthening the partnership between the World Bank and the United Nations Environment Programme. Finally, I am pleased to invite Ms. Joyce Msuya, Acting Executive Director of UN Environment Programme, to address the Assembly.
Thank you very much, Honorable President of the United Nations Environment Assembly, Minister Kisla. Let me honor the Excellencies, President of the Republic of Kenya, Mheshimiwa Uhuru Kenyatta, President of Democratic Socialist of Sri Lanka, Honorable Mr. Maithripala Sirisena, the President of Madagascar, Honorable Andry Rajoelina, the Prime Minister of Rwanda, Mr. Eduardo Ngirente, Deputy Secretary General of the UN, Amina Mohammed, Interim President of the World Bank Group, Kristalina, Georgieva. I'm delighted to be here, but also let me add my words of condolences to the victims of the Ethiopian Airlines crash, in particular our colleague from UN Environment Program, Victor, but also the delegates, youth, UN colleagues and World Bank colleagues who lost their lives. Our thoughts and prayers are with their families and friends. 12 years ago, right here in Kenya, a company launched a service that allowed millions of their customers to send payments using mobile phones. At the time, no one was offering mobile banking services on such a large scale. Kenya led the way. By scaling up a single innovation, the country rapidly emerged as a global leader in financial inclusion, including in rural areas, and touching a number of poor people. Kenya's experience is a powerful example of how a single innovation can transform the way we live and the way our economies function, and equally important, how we can include the marginalized and the underrepresented into a transformation. It is time for all of us in this room and beyond to apply the same level of ingenuity to the environmental challenges that are facing humanity today. We have made progress, and we have a historic opportunity to rise above the doom and gloom narrative, but time is short. We are past pledging and politicking. What is at stake is life and society as we know it. The science has spoken. We cannot ensure a healthy future for our planet by tweaking around the edges. We need to increase fivefold climate action or risk triggering extreme climate impacts. If we focus on just the next few years, we must tackle three complex environmental challenges with courage and resolve: addressing climate change, stopping biodiversity loss, and awakening people everywhere to the size of their environmental footprints. We have an option. The cost of inaction is higher than the cost of action. Too often, we tend to view these challenges as separate and distinct, but in terms of the actions required to tackle them, they are nearly one and the same. Allow me to offer 5 ideas that can build on the transformational examples on how we can address these challenges. First, if we have to stop relying on fossil fuels to power economic growth, we can achieve this by embracing circularity, reducing, reusing, and redesigning everything that we produce and consume. Second, we need to reset our relationship with nature by safeguarding our wild places and valuing the environment in our financial, accounting, and infrastructure decisions. Third, we need to rethink how our cities function and plan ahead for an urban future. 4, we need to ensure that people everywhere have access to clean cooling so that they can live comfortably and safely, store food and medicines, and make a difference in global warming. And 5, we need to transform the race for renewable energy into a full-on sprint for humanity. While we may disagree on precise steps we should take, we must never turn our backs on the debate. Now, more than ever, we must show our steadfast resolve to embrace and sustain our system of environmental governance and multilateralism. In this journey to 2030, here in Nairobi, and later this year at the Secretary General's Climate Summit in New York, UN Environment, together with our UN sisters and brothers, is here to support you in making the kinds of changes that our planet needs. At the Environment Assembly, this assembly, let us craft ambitious solutions that compel all of us gathered here to work together with urgency, coherency, and agency. We have a saying in Kiswahili, chombo hakiendi ikiwa kila mtu anapiga makasia yake. A boat does not go forward if each one is rowing his or her own way. Our collective action is needed. As our window of opportunity gets smaller by the hour, each one of us must ask ourselves, what does ambitious climate action look like? For people, for planet, and for posterity, what are we ready to bring to the table? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks, Joyce, and I also wish to thank you for your stable stewardship of UN Environment Programme. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take this opportunity to extend on behalf of all those gathered here our sincere appreciation to the people of Kenya for their hospitality and to the efforts of the Secretariat to make this assembly successful. We will now bid farewell to the Presidents and Prime Minister and Deputy Secretary General who have joined us today, and we will resume immediately with national statements in the same conference room here. Ladies and gentlemen, may I ask you to take your seat again? Distinguished delegates, we continue with the session, and our order for the session is as set out in the speakers list. Should you need to consult the list, our conference room officer will be of assistance. Before I invite our first speaker, I want to remind our delegates that during Tuesday's plenary session, it was decided that the timer would be set in front of the speaker on the left in order to monitor the allocated time of 3 minutes while speaking. Secondly, the microphone will automatically turn off, as I just demonstrated, after the allotted speaking time and a small grace period. I urge all the delegates to exhibit restraint and make your statement within the allotted time. Please be informed that a video and a written text of statements made will be published on the website of the Environment Assembly. On this note, I would like to remind delegations that have not sent their statements to the Secretariat yet, please do so. And now, I ask for silence and order, please. And it is my honor to invite Her Excellency Ms. Isabella Lövin, Minister for Environment and Climate of Sweden, and also Deputy Prime Minister of Sweden. The floor is yours.
Distinguished delegates, excellencies and ministers, we've gathered here today to encourage action on the environment, but some of us that should have been here are tragically missing. Our thoughts are with the families and friends in a very difficult time. We share the sorrow of colleagues and others who knew those that were on Ethiopian Flight 302. Together, we will remember them. Ladies and gentlemen, the story of mankind's relationship with our planet has long been a story of conquest, finding new land, taming the wild, cutting down trees and killing animals. But our attitude towards our planet urgently needs to change. Entire species are going extinct at an alarming pace. The number of plastic particles in our oceans far exceeds the stars in the Milky Way. The climate change is altering the very conditions of life and the very biochemistry of the ocean with no turning back. It's late on Earth for us to come together to make sure that the story takes a new turn. We no longer need to conquer our planet. It has already been conquered. The next chapter must be how to heal and to protect our planet. It must be about stewardship and sustainable use, so that we leave our planet in a better condition to our children than it was when we arrived. And this is a global challenge. So let all of us continue to strengthen the UN Environment Assembly as an important arena to write this chapter. UNEP has helped us to maintain a focus on the environment ever since the Stockholm Conference in 1972. Now, when we need to realize the Agenda 2030 and the Paris Agreement, its role is more crucial than ever. The disastrous effects of climate change tell us with abundant clarity that we need to mitigate and make adaptive efforts. But climate change also tells us something else, that the increasing stress of rising temperatures that puts on all life means that we must try much harder to reduce other pressures. We simply cannot expect our ocean to cope with both plastic pollution, overfishing, and eutrophication on top of the effects of climate change, with acidification, warming, and deoxygenation. We urgently need to increase the resilience of the marine ecosystems, and I hope that UNEA 4 will be a turning point when we set the stage for clean waters, healthy marine habitats, and restored fish populations. Excellencies, plastic is now found everywhere, and we're fed up with it. Marine plastics from littering and mismanaged waste is a major threat to ecosystems. Take single-use products, for instance, many of which are only used for a few seconds, while it takes hundreds of years for them to degrade. One of my most important missions for this meeting is to push for action against plastic pollution. As noted in the study commissioned by UNEA 2, Current governance strategies and approaches do not adequately tackle this issue. We absolutely need to step up our efforts, and I look forward to continue working with all of you on this. Plastic pollution is linked to another important problem and threat to human health: the use and spread of toxic chemicals. Since 1950, more than 140,000 new chemicals and pesticides have been synthesized. Many of these pose serious risks. In fact, every 30 seconds, one worker dies from exposure to toxic chemicals. Sadly, we
Thank you, Minister Levin. Unfortunately, your time allocated by the Assembly has expired. I kindly ask you to send your written statement to the Secretariat so that it may be uploaded on the UN Environment Assembly website. And I hereby urge the distinguished delegates to really limit your statements to the allotted time, as the microphone automatically cuts off after 3 minutes at the short period of grace. And now I invite His Excellency Mr. Masagos Zulkifli, Minister for the Environment and Water Resources of Singapore, to take the floor. And I also announce that he will also take a statement for Asia-Pacific Group. So 2 statements. The floor is yours, Minister.
Thank you. Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished guests, allow me to begin by expressing my deepest condolences to families and loved ones of the victims of the ill-fated flight ET302. I will first deliver Singapore's national statement, followed by the Asia-Pacific statement arising from our meeting in January. We must take urgent action to protect our planet for future generations. To develop sustainably, we need a paradigm shift by changing our production and consumption patterns from the linear take, make, throw approach to a circular one that reuses resources endlessly. This circular approach is supported by 3 pillars. First, reducing our production and consumption with the support and participation from all stakeholders. Second, building a strong foundation in science and innovation to turn waste into resource and generate new economic spin-offs for our people. Third, enhancing global and regional cooperation to accelerate the shift of economic systems towards more sustainable trajectories. Let me share how Singapore is building on these pillars. The key to achieving sustainable consumption and production is to reduce what we produce and consume. This is why Singapore has designated 2019 as the year towards zero waste. The aim is to imbue a greater awareness of resource scarcity and mobilize the nation to protect our resources and environment by consuming and producing less. We also need innovative solutions to maximize resource efficiency and do more with less. This year, Singapore will begin construction of a world's first, an integrated facility for used water and solid waste treatment. It leverages circular economy principles to reap synergies from the water, energy, waste nexus. To encourage others to find new ways to turn trash into treasure, we launched a $45 million Closing the Waste Loop Initiative Fund, research supporting circular economy approaches. National efforts are critical but insufficient to address global environmental challenges. Partnerships and dialogue through global platforms such as UNEA help accelerate the seeding of new ideas, adoption of innovative environmental solutions, and implementation of collaborative projects. On a regional level, Singapore recently hosted the 3rd Forum of Ministers and Environment Agencies Authorities of the Asia-Pacific as part of our efforts to galvanize regional action. I will therefore now present a statement of the outcome of the 3rd Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities of Asia-Pacific held in Singapore last year. This year, I had the honor to chair this ministerial meeting of 41 countries in the Asia-Pacific region. The meeting saw a record turnout of over 35 high-level representatives, including a head of state, a head of government, and ministers. In the interest of time, I will read out a summary of the 4 key outcomes of the forum. First, the forum identified priority issues on sustainable consumption and production in the region. Delegates also shared their national actions and experiences on implementing solutions related to sustainable consumption and production, and discussed progress within the region to attaining the SDGs. Second, the forum noted the progress on regional implementation of resolutions and decisions of the last UN Environment Assembly. The forum further requested UNEP to scale up work on marine litter and plastic management, raise awareness on air pollution at national level, promote circular economy and resource efficiency. Third, the participation of UNIFOR President Slim Kistler and his interaction with delegates on the draft ministerial declaration is very much appreciated. The forum expressed support for a declaration that was ambitious but practical, reflecting the differences in national circumstances. The meeting also stressed the importance of providing technology, capacity building, and financial support for developing countries. And fourth, finally, one common theme that emerged from the forum was the need to have new forms of economic growth, such as the approach of circular economy in transforming waste into resources. Circular economy also requires strong research and development and innovation. Further, there is a need for a coordinated regional approach to promote a regional circular economy. Overall, the forum provided a useful opportunity for the countries in the Asia-Pacific to exchange views and coordinate approaches. We look forward to the next ministerial meeting to be hosted by the Republic of Korea. The full version of the regional statement will be submitted to the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Zulkifli. Now I invite Her Excellency Lorena Aguilar, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Costa Rica. The floor is yours.
Excellencias, es un honor estar en...
Excellencies, it's great to be in this United Nations Environment Assembly in Nairobi. Being here is like being at home. Thank you so much for your hospitality. I would like to thank the President of UNEA, Mr. Kristalina, for his incredible work during the preparatory period for UNEA 4. Under his mandate, we have strengthened the principles of multilateralism, discussing our positions and generating solutions. It doesn't sound like much, but those of us that participate in this process know how difficult it is to make agreements and to agree on every word. But we need to go beyond words and good intentions, and we need to move towards action. Our citizens, just like our sons, daughters, and grandchildren, are demanding this of us. Now, more than ever, in a world where populism is constantly attacking multilateralism, our duty is to move to implementation. However, we need to move to ambitious action, because this is what we need to do. What is at stake is our civilization, our cultural, spiritual creations, as well as our economic systems. The ministerial declaration and resolutions here are a starting point, a very basic starting point. And in Costa Rica, we believe that the mission in terms of climate change and sustainability is key when it comes to developing sustainably and ensuring that this happens for our populations. Sustainable development and green growth is the only means to do this, in particular in countries that are very vulnerable, like the one that I represent today. I hope, and indeed Costa Rica has, launched an ambitious plan for decarbonisation before 2050. The impact of a bad development model could lead us to a point of no return, where diseases increase, where our crops are destroyed, our waters are polluted, and our woods, our forests are destroyed. And this will have an impact for decades to come. And so we have 3 resolutions and topics that we believe to be key for advancing with the Agenda 2030 and meeting the Sustainable Development Goals. Firstly is to do with sustainable mobility. Secondly, promoting gender equality, human rights, and empowering women and girls in environmental government, as well as the third one, which is a planet free of pollution. We would like to thank the delegations for their collaboration and their hard work in allowing us to meet consensus here, which help us to create these resolutions for UNEA 4. Thank you very much. We also mustn't forget that we need ambition, action and innovation. And this is the best tribute we can pay to those who lost their lives on their flight to Nairobi. For them, for their children, and particularly for the children of Victor, it is time for us to put our plans into action. Thank you very much.
The interpreters regret to announce that we will now be completing our work.
Thank you, Minister Aguilar, for this statement. And our last speaker for this session is His Excellency Mr. Wallace Cosgrove, Minister for Environment, Energy and Climate Change of Seychelles. The floor is yours.
The interpreters regret to announce that we will now complete our work for this morning.
Gentlemen, this fourth United Nations Environment Assembly is a landmark and game-changing one for the world because the theme asks of us to think and come up with innovative solutions for the many environmental challenges that we have, but also about how we consume through more sustainable consumption and also production. It can no longer be business as usual. We need to shift towards a more sustainable and more circular economy. The world is not a giant landfill or dump yard. We should use the scientific knowledge that we have developed over the many decades and put it to good use so that the planet does not suffer due to our ignorance and carelessness, especially when it comes to products and items that ends up as waste materials. Research and innovation should be intensified in the development of more environmentally friendly options or alternatives such as the positive movement that we are seeing in the global shift towards phasing out of single-use plastics. Same efforts should be explored in chemical management to achieve safer and less toxic material flows to protect human health and the environment from harmful effects of chemicals in waste. Seychelles is a small island developing state. We are not a major producer of goods. However, as a high-income country, we do consume a lot. With this in mind, we are doing our bit, for example, in the fight against single-use plastics. In 2017, we introduced a ban on single-use plastic bags and other plastic utensils, such as plates, cups, and forks, spoons, etc. This year, we continue with the movement with the introduction of a ban on single-use plastic straws. As a country, we are not only putting restrictions on single-use plastics, but we are also promoting the use of more environmentally friendly alternatives. And also continue to encourage the private sector to participate more actively in recycling activities. Mr. President, as a large oceanic state, the ocean is our survival and livelihood. Therefore, it is important that we use and exploit the oceans and its resources in a sustainable manner, particularly sustainable fisheries, but also strive to explore the untapped potentials of our oceans to the development of the blue economy. To conclude, we continue to be at the receiving end of many issues which are discussing here that impacts on the ocean, for example, marine litter and plastic pollution. Therefore, more action needs to be taken at a global level by the main producers of marine litter towards more effective waste management. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Minister Cosgrove. Distinguished delegates, as you are very well aware, we are unfortunately behind with our schedule, so I apologize for this, and I give the floor to the Secretariat to explain how we will proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And as I informed in earlier sessions, we are very stretched in terms of interpreters owing to the dramatic accident that befell upon us and which we lost several colleagues, including 3 interpreters that were expected to come to join us here at the UNEA, and we mourn for them. But the reality and the consequence is that we will have to take now one statement in French only by His Excellency the Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development of Senegal. Afterwards, we will adjourn the session and rearrange the list of speakers, keeping the precedence that it's given and due to Ministers of the Environment and then Vice Ministers and other heads of delegations. So, Mr. President, I kindly request you to give the floor to His Excellency Minister of Senegal, and afterwards we will adjourn the session and publish a revised list of speakers.
Thank you, Jorge. And I invite His Excellency Mr. Mohammed Hierno Dieng, Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development of Senegal. The floor is yours.
Merci. Monsieur le Président, chers collègues, distingués invités. Le thème de cette présente session nous interpelle tous directement, car intrinsèquement lié à l'urgence fondamentale de sauver notre planète. Déjà en 1968, l'écologue américain Feu Garrett Hardin, en décrivant la tragédie du bien commun, avait démontré que l'humanité courait à sa perte si l'utilisation désastreuse de nos ressources naturelles se poursuivait. Vous conviendrez avec moi que cette assertion datant d'un demi-siècle reste encore pertinente dans le contexte actuel de recherche effrénée de profit, de raréfaction des ressources naturelles et d'augmentation des externalités négatives. Nous sommes ainsi arrivés à un stade où la capacité de charge de nos différents milieux naturels est pratiquement dépassée. En outre, le gaspillage alimentaire observé par une infime partie de la population mondiale contraste avec la faim observée dans la majorité, surtout dans les couches les plus vulnérables qui n'arrivent pas à satisfaire même leurs besoins alimentaires de base. En conséquence, nous devons changer de paradigme et agir. Madame, Monsieur, la diminution de notre empreinte écologique ne peut se faire que dans une modification de nos modes de consommation et de production. Il devient dès lors nécessaire de promouvoir le développement économique sans compromettre les ressources naturelles dont la surexploitation se fait au détriment à long terme de la survie de toute l'humanité. N'oublions pas que nous sommes tous et toutes les garants de la promesse faite aux générations futures depuis Rio +20 de mettre en place des instruments, des mécanismes pour une consommation et une production raisonnable, respectueuse de l'environnement et de l'ensemble des richesses de la planète. Pour cela, nous devons regarder avec lucidité et clairvoyance les défis qui nous attendent au regard des programmes de développement des Nations Unies pour l'horizon 2030 et des documents de planification de nos États respectifs. Le Sénégal, sous le leadership de son Excellence le Président Macky Sall, a intégré les principes du développement durable dans la mise en œuvre de ses politiques publiques, de ses programmes de développement et même dans son arsenal juridique. Car en effet, dans notre Constitution de 2016, il est inscrit très clairement le principe d'un droit à un environnement. Le PSE, qui est le référentiel des politiques publiques du Sénégal, porte en son article 2 la dimension environnementale. De plus, dans ces perspectives, il est inscrit également la nécessité de la préservation de nos forêts. C'est pourquoi notre attention a porté sur la déforestation, l'érosion côtière, les pollutions de l'air et les pollutions plastiques, l'amélioration de nos gestions des ressources naturelles, aussi bien dans le domaine marin que dans l'extraction minière. C'est dans cet esprit que nous apportons notre soutien à la déclaration ministérielle qui sera adoptée au cours de cette session. Pour conclure, je voudrais rappeler que les défis sont nombreux et exigent une mobilisation de toutes les parties prenantes, un devoir de vigilance et de responsabilité afin de traduire les engagements pris en actes concrets visant notamment à éradiquer la pauvreté par une meilleure gestion de la biodiversité et des ressources naturelles, adossée au transfert de technologies appropriées et au renforcement des capacités dans le bien-être des générations actuelles et futures. Et lancer un appel pour que cette session fasse partie de celles qui se font avec développement et changement positif, parce qu'il y a beaucoup de colloques sans développement. Je voudrais à mon tour m'associer à toutes les condoléances qui ont été présentées par les victimes du crash qui est survenu récemment. Madame, Monsieur, je vous remercie de votre bien aimable attention.
Thank you, Minister Tierno Dieng. Dear delegates, the session is adjourned until 4 p.m. Thank you.